most of all, to speak about your love without glorifying myself. I pray you would settle my nerves and give me peace. I pray that your story through me makes a change in people. And I pray that you would protect me from whatever response people have, whether that's good, feeding my ego, bad. Hey guys, I have been wanting to film this video for a while, but I guess like with anyone, being vulnerable with your story and with like what that means for you can be something really scary. So what I did was I sat down and I actually just wrote it all out. Dot points. I think for so many people, when they tell their story, when they tell their testimony, like they have a huge polarizing, like singular moment in their life where they have clarity all of a sudden. And I feel like for me, God took me in baby steps, and maybe that's another reason why it was hard to make this video, because I feel like throughout my life I can really look back and see like he was taking me step by step every single moment from childhood all the way to where I am with him now. And there are so many things now that make me so far from perfect, and that's okay, because I know that, I mean, it's human to be imperfect. It's human to not be able to live up to whatever standard we place before ourselves, you know? So I'm hoping that, I guess as I tell this, you know that at the end of my story there's still a ... and there's still so much of a work that God is doing in me that is beautiful, you know? I might look back on this story even in a year's time and be like, wow, that was so incomplete, you know? But I'm really hoping that if you're watching this, that this affects you in a positive way, whether you're a believer or not. And if you don't believe, this story isn't something to pressure you or to make you feel a certain way. It really is just me sharing an intimate part of my life. And I guess with that intimacy and vulnerability comes a little bit of risk. But I've finally come to a place where I feel okay with that risk, because it is kind of scary putting yourself out there. But I think if I'm not incorporating him into what this channel is, then I would almost say that it wouldn't be a fruitful thing in my life. And I don't want him to be on the back burner while I pursue something. I want him to be right there with me. And I think that me sharing this part of my life, despite how intimate it feels, is a way that God's inviting me into sharing this channel with him. So I guess where I will start is from the beginning. Growing up, I was obviously was just normal, so there were ups and downs, and you know, I had two great parents, and I grew up going to church on Sundays with my mum, and I did that until I was about 10 years old. And when I reached 10 years old, I started to fight back a little bit on going. I didn't really want to go. I really just chose not to go because I thought it was boring and because I didn't really derive much meaning from it. I think during that time it wasn't necessarily that I didn't believe in God, or that I did believe in God. I think that never really crossed my mind that I could believe or I wouldn't believe, or there was reason, you would use reason to decide whether you believe or not, I mean, now I know that there's like all sorts of arguments and apologetics and theologies and all these different things that you can look into when you want answers. Back then, when I was 10 years old, I think it was just a matter of, I don't understand it and I don't have fun there, so I don't want to do it. Which I think, every kid kind of has those moments, whether that's church or something else. And so when I was in late primary school, this girl moved to my school and we very quickly became close friends. I would spend a lot of time with her family, and yeah, we would just hang out and be kids on the farm, and we had so much in common. We both loved music, we both loved horses and had the same sense of humor, and so when you're a kid that just automatically makes you BFFs. And when I was in early high school, this girl invited me to youth group, and so I would go anywhere that she would go. So I was like, yeah, I will go to that. Hanging out, eating food, games, it all sounds so good. So I went along to youth, and I had a really nice time. Again, I don't think the God thing really crossed my mind. I mean, I grew up learning about God in school and all of those sorts of things, so it wasn't a foreign concept, but I just don't think it ever crossed my mind. You know, I was just kind of soaking in the information as it came, and I don't think I really did anything with that information. It was just kind of there. But I kept going kind of every second week, sometimes every couple of months I would go. But I always loved it when I went because the kids there were so happy, and the youth leaders there, I just thought they were so cool, and they seemed to be so joyful, which was just something that really, I desired that kind of joy for myself. And again, I didn't really identify that that was a God thing. I just thought they had something special. And so I kept going back, and eventually I went to a youth camp that they had during the school holidays, and slowly but surely, again, I was really there for the social stuff, but slowly but surely I started wondering what that something more was. What's this something more that everyone has? What is this thing that's making them joyful? Why, when it's time to pray, do they close their eyes? And I just had a lot of whys and a lot of hows and a lot of desire. I had a lot of desire because these people seemed to have a great deal of peace. I was a pretty sassy teenager, and I think that really came from a place of just desiring to be told that I was loved no matter who I was, and no matter what I was like or how I was perceived or whatever. I really just, I wanted people to tell me that I was cherished and I was valuable. Yeah, you know, those desires just started bubbling up within me around that age. And I remember those people around me, they seemed to have those same desires, but it seemed like that desire was filled by something. And I remember one night, there was one of the night sessions, and I don't remember truthfully if I was crying because I wanted something more but I didn't know what it was, or if God did something within me. And I remember going up to one of the leaders and being like, I don't know why I'm upset. And he said to me, he just said to me, sometimes God moves in us in a mysterious way. And that was the first time I really thought about the fact that God could do anything more than be in a church or be someone you pray to when you want something. And so I took that as food for thought, and really that was something I would think about often. God moves within us in mysterious ways, and it's still true now. And so there was this part of me that was really, now that I knew that God could do something relational, and that God was a God that wanted to be close to me, that was in one of the talks, I started to think about God more seriously, about what that means for me. God cares about me as a person. God cares about me as an individual. God thinks I'm valuable. And these truths that were shared with me gave me like this hope that this hole that was in my life that I've been trying to fill with the affection of so many people maybe wasn't being filled because that's not what it was meant to be filled with. And so I just carried that quietly inside of myself. I didn't really talk to many people about it. And then one night, I heard someone really close to me. I overheard him say that I was being brainwashed. And that was something that broke my heart, really. And I hadn't really talked about my faith with those people before because, I knew that they didn't think the same things, and I was comfortable with the fact that they didn't believe, but I wasn't comfortable sharing that this really special thing that I was carrying with myself. And it was such an intimate, vulnerable part of my life that I really didn't, even with my friends from church, I never really spoke about what that was like for me internally, to feel something so special through the power of prayer and through the power of encounter with God. And God was really revealing to me how much he cared about me. But of course, you know, with those feelings of desiring to be loved, you seek those out in the people around you as well. You seek those things out. And so to hear someone so close to me say that I was being brainwashed, it really made me question everything. And it didn't make me question whether God was real, because by that point I knew I believed in God purely from the fact that he had really transformed my self-worth and the way that I felt about myself and the way that I could love other people, and even the way that I could think about the world, like the beauty that I would see in the world around me. So those things didn't come into question, but it did make me question whether it was worth following God if the people close to me in my life would say things like that and would think that I wasn't smart enough to make decisions in regards to my beliefs. I don't know, that I was less intelligent, that I was not smart enough to realize if I was being brainwashed, which, I mean, if you're being brainwashed, you're kind of being forced into an idea, but realistically no one really ever asked me or told me to believe. They just offered what their life looked like after they met God, and I chose. And I remember that was something really important to me, that I chose God, and the fact that I chose it personally for myself was something really precious to me. Anyway, after hearing someone close to me saying that, I really took a huge step back from going to youth, a huge step back from church. I stopped attending again, and I stopped asking God to be part of my life. I kind of shut him out. I stopped praying in my spare time, which I would do in my bedroom, and for a while it didn't feel much different until I went to year 11 and 12. And in year 11 and 12, I kind of just went all in on seeking that love, that affection that I desired. I no longer felt like it was something that was being fulfilled. That desire came back, and it came back really strong, and probably more so than it had ever been before. I felt really less than. I felt really undesirable. I felt really eager to be cared about. And so I just started chasing every boy that would ever show me attention. I really derived so much of my self-worth from, throwing myself into like really quick relationship after really quick relationship. And that was my way of feeling desired. And as soon as I stopped feeling like this person was making me feel worthy, or this person was filling up my emotional need tank, I would move on to the next person. Funnily enough, it didn't make me feel much better about myself. It kind of just made me feel worse. Made me feel like I don't know, like I was disposable, even though I was making other people disposable, and I was really using them for my own emotional gratification. And it was around that time in year 11 and 12 that I started drinking a lot at parties. Like in the day-to-day, I would never drink, but at parties I would just, it wasn't one or two drinks, it was a lot. And my main goal during this season of life was to just act like I was totally fine, act like I had it all together. A lot of that emotionally just came bubbling to the surface in so many different ways, whether that was me skipping school, or whether that was me lashing out at the people around me, or treating friends badly, or just blocking people out around me entirely and not letting them in on where I was at. And so that was my school experience. By the time I finished school, I really just felt horrible about myself all the time. And I still hadn't let anyone in on just how stretched I felt. I really just knew that there was something missing, and I couldn't put my finger on it, because by that point I'd really walked so far from my relationship with Jesus that I'd had as an early teenager. And I'd walked so far that I just stopped thinking about him. And after I left school, I moved to Sydney by myself. I got a job, and I was doing the music industry thing, and there was a big part of me that was loving it and relishing in my new freedom, being a young adult and really loving life up there. But there was still a really huge part of me that was really broken. And that brokenness, if you don't address it, it really festers. All this time I was still occasionally meeting up with friends from church, but never really going to church, pretending my life was just amazing. When people would ask, I would just talk about the highlight reel, all of these things that from the outside looked just spectacular and like I was living this dream life, but inside I was just really in so much pain. And a friend of mine, that same friend who invited me to youth group at the very beginning, she kept in contact, and she'd moved to Sydney for university, and I think she just had an inkling that there was something that was going on and that I wasn't doing well, and I think she just knew. And so she would text me and she would let me know she was thinking of me, and she would invite me to different events and really try and include me. And she ended up texting me and saying, hey, I would really love it if you would come to this summer camp that's on. I said no. And she called me maybe at the end of that week, and she invited me again, and I said no a second time. And I think one of the excuses I used was I just can't afford it, it's too expensive, but I'd love it if I could have come, but I just can't. I think I said that quite flippantly. So the third time that she called, she said, hey, my parents have put in the money for you to be able to attend this camp, so I've bought you a ticket if you want to come. And that third phone call, I wanted to say no because it was easier to hide, but there was just some really strong feeling internally. And it wasn't a feeling of being pressured, it was a feeling of hope that I hadn't felt since, for a really long time. And so I said, okay, let me book some time off. Can you find me a lift? And she said, yeah, I can find you a lift. And I went. And that week, I really felt like Jacob from the Bible, just wrestling with God and demanding that he prove. Well, I guess Jacob didn't really demand of proof, but I demanded, if you really were that God that I knew when I was a kid before I moved away from you, you have to show me, because I don't have it in me to blindly believe. I don't have it in me to walk by faith and not by sight, not at this moment. There's just so much going on. And I think a lot of that wrestling with God was so unconscious. I turned up and I was so closed off to knowing him again because of that wound that had happened within me, and that I was brainwashed. And so that wound, I carried it with me like a weapon. And I really just, I had no time or place for being convinced of God by other people. Luckily, no one really tried. They were just really friendly and kind and welcoming. And the only time they ever really spoke of God was when they spoke about their desire for him and the wounds that they had in their own lives and the fact that their lives weren't perfect. They never really asked me probing questions. They never really forced me to talk about faith at all. A lot of the conversation was really mundane stuff, just about our lives and being silly. And we were still 18, so, dancing around the dorm bathrooms or setting up where we're going to sleep or talking about boys or talking about whatever, 80% of that conversation was not related to God at all. But there was just a warmth in these people that was healing. It was really healing. And so I slowly but surely was letting down my walls, not to these people. I was very social with them from the minute I arrived. There was a huge part of me that just put this big wall in front of God and said, don't cross it. And as these people were just making me feel like I was at home and were investing in me, truly investing in me, not because I was there and just happened to be an easy person to invest in, but because they genuinely wanted to know about me without any ulterior motive. Those bricks, I started taking them away myself. Again, it wasn't forceful. It was something that I just felt like I was in a safe place to do. And each night there was a night session, and I would pray. And I hadn't really prayed that seriously ever in my life. Not ever had I really implored with God and really wrestled with him. Violently isn't the right word, but my emotions in that were just so raw. I was so honest with God, and I don't think I'd ever been that clear with him about what I wanted and who I was and where I was at, and me being angry with him. I was furious that he loved all of the people around me, but I still couldn't believe that I was worthy enough to be loved by him. And each night session I would pray like that, just really brutally. We had this really beautiful time of prayer every single night. There were people praying over other people on the sides of the rooms. And one night I went up and When they asked me what I wanted prayer for, I said, I don't even remember what I asked for. I think I asked for joy and peace or something along those lines, something really basic. And I just, the desire of my heart was really that God would show me that he was there. And that night he really did show me. There was a moment where I was just so overcome by pure joy. Every feeling that I had had for those years of anxiety and worthlessness and frustration and anger, it didn't go away, but it just became unimportant to me. And as it became more and more unimportant to me that I felt that way, the feelings just, the implication of them on my heart dissipated. So yes, I still felt anxious about my future. I still felt anxious about performance, about people pleasing. I still felt insecure. I still felt all of those things. They weren't taken away just by one moment. Their impact on me was gone. I could truly face what had been happening to me head on without being so overcome that I avoided it. And so I left that camp with a lot of conviction. I knew that God was real. I knew that God was real. He showed his heart for me. Just in the slightest whisper internally, I just knew God was saying, I'm here. I'm here. I love you. I see you. I was always with you. Even when you stepped away, even when you hid yourself from me, I was here with you. And I could really feel him grieving for me, grieving with me at how much pain I'd been in. And I was really moved that a God who was so much greater than me or my life would concern himself with just me. And as much as the world could grant me temporary numbness or temporary distraction from this gap in my life, I knew in that moment that he would change my life if I let him, and he's proven himself time and time again in that. So I left that camp knowing with conviction that I needed to pursue this. I needed to pursue God despite being judged. I was really scared of being judged, and it's something painful that happens when you make that change in your life and people don't want you to change. But the implications of that judgment actually haven't touched me as nearly as much. It still hurts, but it hasn't touched me nearly as much as it would have in the past before I met God. When I left, I knew with a surety that I had to change my life, change my priorities. And I didn't really know what that looked like yet, but I knew that something had to be different and that God had to be someone that I lent on and that I was honest with and that I would commit to sharing my heart with. And so that was a really big point of contention for me coming home, because as soon as I came home I felt the tug of oh, maybe it's just easier if I slip back into where I was. Maybe it's just easier if I let myself be swept away into what other people want for me, or into who other people think I should be, all these expectations. There were a lot of emotional implications of letting go of all of these things that were really impacting me negatively and just making me so anxious all the time, making me feel like I just was a failure. And I knew God or no God in my life, these things had been doing that. It wasn't me having my conversion that made me think these things weren't good. It's just when I let God into my heart and he healed so much of that pain. When that pain started coming back, I could identify the source. And so I knew I had to change. One night I was praying at home, crying on my living room floor, and I was listening to Whitney Houston. I remember that was my crying music at the time. And all of a sudden the music stopped and my phone started ringing. And when I looked at the caller ID, it was a guy from the summer camp, who I'd met very briefly. We'd swapped numbers because we knew some of the same industry people. So he said, if I ever have a gig for you, I'll let you know. Swap numbers. And it was him, and so I really didn't want to answer the phone, but I again felt that urge, which I now recognize was the urging of the Holy Spirit. At the time I was just like, why do I emotionally not want to answer this phone, but in my heart know I have to? I picked up the phone and I was offered a job as a worship leader. For me that was a game changer. So I packed up my stuff, I moved to where that job was. I left the music industry in the secular sense. And that was where my life changed. That was where God really ministered to me. God really used the people around me to implement this huge change in my life. He really knew what I needed. He heard every cry of my heart every time I prayed and I talked about just how burdened I was, how angry I was at the world around me, at my circumstances. He would just grant me all these people that would just love me. In that job, I saw hundreds, if not thousands, of lives changed. And each time a life changed, my life just changed that little bit more. And I just became more and more in love with the heart of the Father. And I gave my life to him that year. I just remember so many times just being so grateful and praying that he would just use me in whatever way he wished. And he has. He has. And there are people in my life now that are a testament to God using me. And I don't say that with any ego or any self-glorification. I say that knowing that those simple prayers that I prayed when I was first handing my life over to Jesus, those are some of my greatest answered prayers now. And there are young people spread throughout Wollongong and Sydney who God introduced himself to them through me, through my singing, which I remember saying a prayer, God, if you don't use my voice, I'm never singing again because it's so painful now. And he did. And I could ramble on and on about this forever, but I guess this goes out to you. In this video, I have the same prayer that I have for every worship song I've ever led, which is, if you're going to use me, use whatever I can offer, Lord, whatever the quality of it. I know that there's definitely a lot of questions in my heart about the quality of my offerings, but the beautiful thing about Jesus is you can offer him the smallest amount if that's all that you can offer, and he will just take it and multiply it and bless it and use it. And I didn't have any massive story. I didn't almost die. I wasn't in some crazy state of anything, but God just used my little everyday moments to speak to me and to transform me, and I can gratefully say that my life would not be what it is without him. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for loving me. Bless you. And I'll see you next week.